You're listening to KUCI 88.9 FM in Irvine.
More than 16 years ago, a young musician composed Noah's Ark, an opera. 4,700 performances later, this young man, Hershey Felder, has graced some of the most prestigious theaters, both national and international. He's a Steinway concert artist and has won the Ovation Award for Best Actor in a Musical and Best Musical. In October 2014, America Theater magazine referred to Felder's blend of musical biography, character study, and piano virtuosity as a one-man cottage industry for whom quality is paramount, in that he feels a responsibility to his audience. He is currently performing in Hershey Felder as Irving Berlin, the latest one-man tribute to musical greats, which includes George Gershwin alone, Beethoven as I Knew Him, and Maestro Bernstein. I'm very pleased to have him on our show. First thing I'd love to know is, why did you choose to center a show on Irving Berlin?
Well, historically, I think really the truth of the matter is the music. You always choose these characters because of the music. And I've been quoted already as calling him the American Mozart, and I really do believe that. You know, I come from a tradition of classical music, of Bach, of Beethoven, of Brahms, of Chopin, so on and so forth. And so the nature of the beast is that I was trained to be a snob, you know, to look down upon popular music and so on. But the more I got into the life of Irving Berlin, and I did so at the request really of theater managers, and one of the directors of one of the theaters said, you have to do this, and I didn't want to. I didn't think it was something that I could really bring some life to. And he just kept on pushing me for 7 years, and I said, finally, all right. And I met the Berlin daughters, and I started to investigate and realize not only did he have an unbelievably prolific career as a musician, but he had an amazing life. And the more I dug into his songs, I realized how much those songs actually related to his life and how much those songs actually relate to our lives. He basically cataloged 100 years of American history, and he wrote those songs because they were genuine reflections about what he felt about this country that he loved so much. And there is something incredibly touching and human, but also honest about it. And it reflects a person who really cared. And when you look at his body of work, you know, even if you look at the stuff that's uber popular, you know, the stuff that's the highest selling song in the history, which is White Christmas, has sold more than any song by any other composer, classical or contemporary or whatever, one realizes what a genius this man was when it came to actually composing music. And although he was not quite a piano virtuoso or even a pianist, he had this ability to pick melody out of the air and understand harmony out of the air and sing it back to his pianist secretary. I know that this is just a sort of a miraculous talent. It's one of those godlike talents that comes along once in a century, if that. And once I understood that, I realized this was a character I would be honored to even touch with my little fingernail, never mind to be able to embody.
Up in Canada, you're actually very famous. Again, you're married to the former Prime Minister of Canada. And again, everyone knows who you are. But down here, we don't know that much about you, being in America. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, I think people down here, I mean, in Canada, nobody really knows me at all. I left there after a very long time. I've been in America for quite a long time and quite known on the stages in the United States, certainly in Orange County. I've performed a great deal, both in San Diego, in Los Angeles, San Diego, and at Laguna. A great deal, but I've created a number of musical characters that roles, from Gershwin to Chopin, Beethoven, Bernstein, the first person to do these things on the stage, and have found that people really want to know the artists behind the music, and they want to understand music better, and it's also fun to be able to act and play virtuoso piano at the same time. I was an actor separately from being a pianist, and with the Gershwin show 17 years ago, I put those two together, and it became a bit of an international thing. And so, I've been on stages in the United States for quite a while, playing for a lot of people.
Yeah, Irving Berlin, he was actually an immigrant, very patriotic too. You were actually an immigrant yourself. Is that kind of very similar between the two of you?
Well, I come from a family that emigrated from Europe before, during, and after the Second World War, so I understand that. Although I was born quite a bit after that, I came to the United States as a child to study. But what is it? Was it Churchill who said the United States and America, the United States and Britain are two countries separated by a common language? So it's a little bit the same thing between Canada and the United States. I'm very familiar. I grew up basically, as a neighbor, and more so did most of my studies in the United States. So while I was born in Canada, I'm very much so somebody who feels very American in my art and the things that I have done. I don't know that I would call myself an immigrant because I'm so entrenched in my work here and so on and so forth. But I find myself to be very much at home in the United States. It's sort of home. It's been home for a very long time.
Yeah, okay. Just to tell you about your audience, this is UCI's radio station. We have like 29,000 students here. Their age is about from 18 to 25. Mm-hmm. And again, when it comes to theater, again, they are like educated. They're probably left-leaning. Probably income-wise, they're okay and all that. The only thing about it is age-wise. Usually, if they were like 20 years older, they'd be the ideal people who would actually go to your concerts and all that. But they're probably, again, they're probably not exactly the type of people who would show up. So what would they expect to see if they actually do decide to go?
Well, one of the things that's interesting about this is, music is good for all ages, and history is wonderful for all ages. And, there are people say, well, there are certain composers whose music is just nostalgia. And I go, well, that's like saying that Shakespeare is only good for people who've been dead for 500 years. I mean, the truth of the matter is anything that's really good keeps on reinventing itself for new generations. And we keep on rediscovering it. And when young people come, and we have a great many young people, one of the nice things about the kinds of shows is that between the students who come as part of school programming and the parents who bring their children when school is off, and then the parents who bring their parents, one of the things, because music is so great and because it's wonderful, is I'm able to see a very big arc of people who come and who all enjoy it in the same way. And by that I mean,
for those of you unfamiliar with the works of Irving Berlin, here's Anything You Can Do from the 1946 Broadway musical Annie Get Your Gun.
Anything you can do, I can do better. I can do anything better than you.
Oh, you can.
Yes, I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Anything you can be, I can be greater. Sooner or later, I'm greater than you.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. I can shoot a partridge with a single cartridge.
I can get a sparrow with a bow and arrow.
I can live on bread and cheese.
And only on that?
Yes.
So can a rat.
Any note you can reach, I can go higher.
I can sing anything higher than you.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
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 No, you can't.
I can buy cheaper. I can buy anything cheaper than you.
50 cents?
40 cents.
30 cents.
20 cents.
Ah, you can't.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Anything you can say, I can say softer.
I can say anything softer than you.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
You can't.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
I can drink my liquor faster than a flicker.
I can drink it quicker and get even sicker.
I can open any safe
without getting caught.
Sure.
That's what I thought, you crook.
Any note you can hold, I can hold longer.
I can hold any note longer than you.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can. Yes,
no, you can't.
can wear, I can wear better. In what you wear, I look better than you.
In my coat?
In your vest.
In my shoes?
In your hat.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Anything you can say, I can say faster.
I can say anything faster than you.
No, you can't.
Yes, can.
I can.
Yes, can.
I can.
Yes, can.
I can. I can. I can jump a hurdle.
I can wear a girdle.
I can knit a sweater.
I can fill it better.
I can do most anything.
Can you make a pie?
No.
Neither can I.
Any note you can sing, I can sing sweeter.
I can sing anything sweeter than you.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
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 No, you can't.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
UCI is actually a very large campus. We have 29,000 students here. But again, they're really kind of not the type of demographics that would go to your type of concert.
Well, as I was saying, it is in fact a demographic because music ranges from all ages, and it's interesting. The older the music, the Chopin, the Beethoven, the younger the kids are. It's really amazing. People are interested in music all over the world, and history is very interesting. But there is this error that is made that only a certain demographic goes. Well, the demographic turns out to be people who like music and want to know about music, or who play instruments, or who are composers. It's a very interesting. So it's really not age specific, rather it is interest specific. And people who like, as I was saying, that people who are interested in leaving the theater knowing something more than when they came in, that's the kind of crowd. And it's, student crowd is a great crowd. And when I perform for a student crowd, be it young students or university students, or give master classes, it's always something that is beloved because everybody likes being a little bit smarter, later on in the day after they spent time learning something.
Great. Actually, again, back to Irving Berlin. He actually is a lot like you. Basically a musician. Again, you don't consider yourself an immigrant, but again, he did come from, I believe he came from Israel, and again.
No, he didn't come anywhere from Israel. He came from Russia.
Oh, sorry. That showed my ignorance. Russia, I'm just showing.
Russia is quite a far away from Israel,
Sorry.
But no, he came from Russia, and he was. He was a subject of Tsar Nicholas II up until he was, in fact, 30 years old. And he only got his American citizenship when he was 30, but he was an immigrant to the United States when he was 5 years old in 1893.
Yeah, that's very interesting because a lot of his music was very patriotic. And the fact that he didn't get his citizenship until then, you think it was because no one would give it to him? There was just some kind
No, it's because, people came from foreign countries, and because you needed to apply, and he very much so was a landed immigrant, of course, but he was somebody who took this country, and it became very much something special to him, and he thanked it every day of his life, most certainly in his music, for everything that America provided him.
And I looked up you off of on the internet. Actually, very prestigious on everything you've done. You actually teach at Harvard and all that. So, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I just find that one of the wonderful things about performing this kind of music for all ages is that everybody takes away what they want to take away from it. And when you're talking about a man who lived to be 101 years old and left the most famous song in the history of published and written music and recorded music, that's a remarkable accomplishment. First of all, there's nobody else who has that because his is the one that is the most famous with White Christmas. So that's already something. It doesn't exist otherwise. And so there's something to be said about learning about the person who actually did that, how he did that, why he did it, and how it happened. So it's a very remarkable thing. And I am quite excited to be playing that character, after all the other characters, and it's really quite wonderful to be able to do so. In terms of my Harvard association, well, I gave master classes at the American Repertory Theater at Harvard, and I was a scholar in residence there. So I'm very much so, and I've been a board member of a number of universities, so I'm very much so well aware of the university program, and I'm not all that much older than the students, but what I can tell you is that if you commit yourself to whatever it is you dream about, then eventually it will come true as long as you keep on working at it.
Great. Okay, then I have a couple of questions for you also, because again, this is a theater show. You know, one of the reasons I got into this program myself is because I take a look at theater, and it's like basically a community theater, which I specialize in. I've seen some of the performances selling for like $5 a seat. That's less than half the price of a movie, and there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing bad about it. Good acting, the sets are fine and everything like that. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that people just aren't going to see theater? Because it's not that it's not entertaining. I mean, it's very nice stuff. I mean, and it's not that it's not good. A lot of it's Tony Award winning. A lot of it's Shakespeare.
Well, first of all, theater is, by virtue of the fact that it requires so many people live, it is an expensive proposition. So doing professional theater is very expensive. Doing live theater and community theater is still expensive. It's even to do community theater is an expensive proposition. And I'm afraid I must disagree, because if you look at the numbers in New York and people are going to see Broadway shows, they're outrageous. Theaters are full now. Certain theaters are not. But if there's a show that people want to see, they will see it. And I can tell you, the Berlin piece that I'm doing now in Laguna, or that I just completed in Los Angeles, sold out for weeks and weeks and weeks with young people, old people, middle-aged people. It doesn't matter. If there's something people want to see, they will go see it. And the experience of being live theater is very, very magical, because you get the communication that you don't get in a movie theater. You get the communication that you don't get off a television screen or off a monitor. You get a human being telling you a story in real time and creating a character for you in real time, and there's nothing like it. It's a very special experience.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I got into it. I guess I was just a little down on myself, because again, our show concentrates on the bottom 80% of theater. Obviously, your equity. We concentrate on community theater and also non-equity. So, what kind of advice would you give to the young actors who basically they're struggling, and they're going to theater, they're working for free because they love it, and they're doing it for a couple of years? What kind of advice would you give them?
That if you really believe in it as a business, then you need to demand to be paid at some point, because that's how the economy of it works. If one constantly, works for free, then it's just a hobby. It's just something. But there is a theater business out there, and one has to set one's standards and say, and I mean it's hard. I mean, because you want to pursue your art and be artistic. But there are many kinds of theater. People can do theater just for enjoyment. It doesn't have to be a business, That's not what I do. I do art, and it is part of a business. As Irving Berlin wrote, there is no business like show business. And, I don't know that that's true. There are lots of businesses like show business, but it still is a form that needs to support itself, and that's very, very important. But the above all importance is the importance of the arts. The arts are really the most valuable thing. They train the brain, they train the soul, they allow for a human being to breathe, allow for a human being to be a human. And, it's the sense of what is impressionism, the idea of taking, something that you see and turning it into a story on a stage. And that's one kind of art. There are many kinds of arts, but I think expressive art is the most important thing in the world. And if, people actually focus on expressive art, I do believe that there is a direction toward a much more peaceful world if people are able to express themselves in ways that were actually creative.
Yeah, I actually look at it as like, some people are asking, why should we support the arts in the United States? And what I always tell everyone is, because the arts make America beautiful. And you ask any woman, is it important to be beautiful? I mean, the arts make us beautiful.
Well, the arts make us human, because if we're not human, then there's no point to what we're doing, and you're beautiful, absolutely. And somebody like Chopin, his whole notion of why he needed to create art was to make the world a more beautiful place than when he came into it. And that's, I think, what all artists want to do in some way or other. But the notion of self-expression in a thoughtful, nonviolent, interesting, curious, artistic way is, the biggest recipe against war, I'd rather see people argue over what's good art and what's not good art than killing each other. And, it's dangerous in art business too, but the fact of the matter is a human being with a position, with a possibility of expression is a great human being.
Okay, great. And also for my audience again, they probably have questions for you. Is how did you get into? I mean, you're probably in a situation. They were in a situation you are, whether they're studying at UCI, they're an art major. They're taking classes. They're trying to get an agent. How did you get into it? What kind of advice can you give to them?
I think you find what your craft is. You understand your craft. Mine was theater and the piano and music and understanding it, and you pursue it and you study and you read and you study and you meet people. You have to be interested in pursuing these things on your own, and pursuing it. It's not something that comes to you or falls on your plate. Yes, some people are nice looking, and so the movie business sees somebody and says, oh, you're nice looking, but ultimately it has to be something you want. You have to be able to want to tell stories, and if you do, then you need to pursue that path in life and never give up. And know that you have something to tell and just never give up. And that's the important thing. I mean, and for some people, they realize it's time to move on. This is not what they're good at or not what they would like to do it, but it would not work. But, if a person really wants it, then you just have to keep on working at it, pursuing it.
Yes, as a piano player, you've probably, I bet you've been studying the piano since you were, like a kid? So probably like 10 years. And again, to be a doctor, you only have to study for 8 years.
Well, I mean, but if you're a doctor, once you have your education, you study your whole life. You don't stop studying. I'd hate to go to a doctor who stopped reading medical journals. So, I think anything that is done well, anything that is worth doing must be done well, and anything that is done well must be worth doing. It's that you can't do it half well. The studying is from the very beginning. It must be your entire life, and you must want to do it. It's a very important thing.
Oh, wow. You've been a pleasure. To be on.
Thank you very much. It's been lovely speaking with you.
Hershey Felder as Irving Berlin will be playing at the Laguna Playhouse from January 16th to February 8th. For more information, go to lagunaplayhouse.com or search for AMB Theater on Tumblr.
The cowboys, the wrestlers, the tumblers, the clowns, the roustabouts that move the show at dawn. The music, the spotlights, the people, the towns, your baggage with the labels pasted on. The sawdust and the horses and the smell. The towel you've taken from the last hotel. There's no business like show business, like no business I know. Everything about it is appealing. Everything the traffic will allow. Nowhere could you have that happy feeling when you are stealing that extra bow. There's no people like show people. They smile when they are low. Yesterday they told you you would not go far. That night you opened and there you are. Next day on your dressing room they've hung a star. Let's go on with the show. The costumes, the scenery, the makeup, the props, the audience that lifts you when you're down. The headaches, the heartaches, the backaches, the flops, the sheriff who escorts you out of town. The opening when your heart beats like a drum. The closing when the customers won't come.
There's no business like show business if you tell me it's so.
Traveling through the country is so thrilling. Standing out in front on opening night. Smiling as you watch the benches filling and see your billing up there in lights.
There's no people like show people. They smile when they are low.
Even with the turkey that you know will fold, you may be stranded out in the cold. Still you wouldn't change it for a sack of gold.
Let's